Yesterday and today were two crazy days, and let me explain why. On August 26th, we start our photo tour in Tuscany. On September the 1st, we start the photo tour in the Dolomite Mountains. Now, for us there is no problem to go there, but for Maria to leave the country, she needs a special passport. So 2 days of crazy walk to do all the paperwork and stuff like that. But we are very happy, and as you can hear, Maria, she's very happy that we've made it. We are currently in Bukaz Gorge. We came here to secure the last details of our workshop in this area, and after that we're going to show you how to use a 10-stop ND filter. But first we have to eat. You have to be strong to use an ND filter. So lately I've been posting some videos where I do a lot of long exposures, and of course because of that I received few messages asking about the process of creating a long exposure. Now I decided to show you the actual thing, how you do a long exposure, but also talk a little bit about the technical aspects and what are the things you need, what to look for. Now I've searched for a place where I could shoot some moving crowds, but because Gorge right now it's extremely crowded with tourists, and literally I had to go into the forest to a waterfall that it's pretty isolated. I know it's a location. I come here with the participants during my workshop, but I decided to come here because here I know for sure there are no tourists. So let's go, and while I descend, I don't know if you can tell, but this is the steep and the waterfall is down there. So while I'm descending, I'm going to talk about the technical aspect, things I do for views on YouTube, my friend. Lucky for me, I know this place very well. I come here often, and there is no surprise in this location for me. Okay, so long exposure, what you need? You need, of course, an ND filter. I recommend, if you don't have any ND filter, to buy a 10-stop one. I also have the 6-stop. You also need a tripod, a good one, and a remote control. As an optional, you may also use a polarizer. Safety tip: when you're hiking, never step on these trunks. They're always slippery, and if you are falling into something like this, and this is permanent damage. Okay, we've made it. We've made it down to the waterfall. Pretty cold down here. The rocks are slippery, so I need to be extra careful. In terms of what type of ND filter you should buy, I have the circular ND filter of 10 stops, and I also have this one here that is the big stopper from Lee. Now I recommend to have this type of ND filter because when you're using the circular one, you are putting the filter on your lens, and then whenever you want to recompose the scene, you have to unscrew it, and that takes a lot of time. And if you also want to use it together with your circular polarizer, you will be in big shit, because the circular polarizer will grip with the ND filter, and then you'll have problems getting it out, and you'll create problems that you don't need. So I recommend using a system that is either Lee or similar to Lee. I recommend Lee because of the ergonomics, the way it's built. Now, another thing that you need to be aware of when to use an ND filter. Well, you are using the ND filter whenever you see something that moves. and you want to capture that movement through time. So if you don't see anything that moves, then you don't need to do a long exposure. How long does this long exposure will take? It's not a recipe. It's not something that you can say, okay, you need 10 seconds, 5 seconds, 11 seconds. So it depends on the light on a certain location. So for me, if it's longer than 1 second, then it's a long exposure, mainly because you can't handheld the camera and you need a tripod for this. First of all, you need to find a good composition. I mean, you can't skip this step. It doesn't matter what type of photo you make, you need to find an interesting composition. After you find this composition, you need to do a test exposure. You put your polarizer, you do an exposure without the ND filter. Okay, so this is the first step. You need to establish a good exposure without the ND filter. I decided to go for a portrait shot, a vertical shot, and I will have these stones over here entering my frame, and also I want to capture, as I said, this foam over here. So I did the initial exposure, and the initial exposure is 1/4 of a second f11 at ISO 100. Now I'm using a phone app. You can use whatever phone app you want. I'm using exposure calculator, and I'm going to see what exposure time I'll get for the 6-stop filter and the 10-stop filter. So at f11, 1/4 of a second, ISO 100, and the filter 10 stops. At the same aperture of f11 and ISO 100, I get 256 seconds, and that's a little bit too much for what I need. Let's see the 6-stop. The 6-stop will give me only 15 seconds. It may be enough, it may be not, but I will go to the 10-stop and also increase the ISO to 320, and I'm going to get 81 seconds. So this is a way to calculate your exposure. Now, after that, you have to switch your lens to manual focus, because the camera won't be able to focus through that filter. Okay, you should turn or rotate your polarizer to have your scene polarized, and then the thing that you have to do is to mount your ND filter as closest as possible to the lens. Now the filters from Lee have a foam, and that foam sticks to the holder and prevents light from entering and bouncing around and creating strange artifacts. It's important to know that. Another thing is that any ND filter will produce a color cast. For example, BW goes toward the orange, Lee goes toward the blue. They say that there is no color cast, but there is a slight one, and this color cast is amplified depending on what type of polarizer you are using. So also a thing to remember. I made the exposure with a 10-stop filter of 81 seconds, but as you can see from the photo, it's too much. The foam of the water really loses itself. So then I decided, okay, this means I need shorter exposure times, and I switched to the 6-stop filter. And in the end, the exposure time was 13 seconds, ISO 200 and f11. Now, as you can see, there is no recipe, and sometimes you need to bump up the ISO, even though it's going to generate some noise. But in this situation, I could not afford to have, for example, not 13 seconds, but 26 seconds, because even at 20 seconds, the shapes or the movement of the foam was lost. So 13 seconds was, I think, the best setting for this type of situation. And this is the way I'm doing this long exposure. So I hope that you've understand the process, and you are also considering this type of photography for your photos. Now I'm going to hike up and meet Monica and Maria, which I'm sure that are really bored by now, because filming by myself took a lot of time. So let's pack up the gear and head up. And while I'm hiking up, I'm going to show you some other photos that are created using this kind of technique.